Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Hugh Humphreys. I'm from the University of East London, and this is a training video of the fourth of our ITaPs, our intensive training and practice. These are pilot programs that we've been running in your schools with your cooperation, which we're very grateful for because you've really made it work. Some of your feedback has been invaluable to us. Some of our student teacher feedback has been really helpful. And this is the sort of the training video, which is going to tell you a little bit about what we're hoping to achieve in ITaP4, Intensive Training and Practice 4. And it's around guided practice and how we respond, or how our student teachers respond to assessment information that they gain in the course of guided practice. So as I said, this is going to be recorded. So those of you who've seen the previous ITaP iterations and been on the training will understand some of these things, that from September a number of changes are being put into ITE, and the sort of some of the more important ones are around curriculum design that goes beyond the core content framework. We've done that already, and secondly, an area that we're looking at subsequent to that is trying to really make coherent and seamless our in-school and university training experiences. This is very important. Ofsted show a great deal of interest in this kind of area, so that what we teach and what you provide has got quite a lot of commonalities already, but we want to make it as seamless as possible. Obviously, the training we give you needs to be aligned with our own curriculum. And two things which will be sort of may possibly new, not for all providers and not for us, but in some respects, the last 6 weeks of teaching students' experience in your schools should be at 80% teaching load. That's the sort of the second half of SBT2. And we're not there yet, but that's something that we'll need to think about. But most importantly, and the biggest sort of disruptor to the way of thinking and challenge to our way of thinking has been the introduction of these 20 days of intensive training and practice, which we've done in 4 separate weeks over the course of the year. They're supposed to provide a laser focus on these pivotal areas of the ITT curriculum. The idea is that we look very hard at what the government likes to call evidence-based theory and practice, and the interplay between those. And there's been quite a lot of criticism of the language and of the sources of that. Jim Horden and Claire Brooks have written an interesting paper about the sort of evidence that the ITaP and that the DFE is pushing on. But nevertheless, it's very much part of the evidence-based framework that most schools are working in. It takes place both in our schools, and it takes place within the UEL as well. And each week, each ITaP week, student teachers engage in all of these areas: critical analysis and problem solving, trying to analyze theory and practice, and then to reflect on all that. And they get feedback all the time from 2 sources, really. One is from us, and the other is from you. And both of us are sort of classified as expert colleagues in this category. We use the evidence-based influence and work of Pam Grossman, her research on integrating theory and practice, and her idea that you sort of approximate, trying to find things that work in practice and then trying to approximate them in both the practice we do in UEL and what we see in schools. So the sort of areas we're talking about are representation, where we make practice visible, the idea of decomposition, where we try and break down a practice to its constituent elements, and then after that we provide practice opportunities both at UEL and in schools that are known as approximations. And we can get sort of nearby approximations, which are very close to your practice, and then sort of things like role play, which become a bit further away approximations that we can try out at UEL. The components are long and complicated. I'm not going to go through this entire diagram, but it gives you an idea that what we're trying to do is to find ways of bringing all of our training and our practice and our theory integrated more and more. So in this idea of trying to integrate our curriculum with that which we provide through you in schools, this is one of the areas that we are going to work most work hardest at. In terms of the ITaP overall, this year our model has been, we've started, if those of you who were with us in September, we were looking at behaviour for learning and a positive learning environment. That took place, I think, in the last week of September. And then sort of 3 or 4 weeks into SBT1, we looked at explicit instruction as an instructional strategy to reduce cognitive load. Then back in March, we looked, or late February, we looked at active participation and memorization through talk, the use of talk partners, and the role of talk to encourage children to process their learning. And then the one we're looking at soon is around guided practice and responding to assessment information. This sort of looks a bit like I do, we do, you do, but we'll see later on that perhaps this guided practice, as well as the active participation, tend to be more in the sort of the we do part of that scheme. When are we taking place? These show you where the ITaPs have been over the year. The ones we're looking at coming up in April starts on the week of the 15th of April, and this is where we're responding to assessment information within guided practice. And this will take place not with large groups of our students in your schools, but more with individuals working with their mentors, observing mentors and others practice, and very much part of SBT2. That shows where it fits in terms of our theoretical and framework, but also the framework that we have, which is statutory. In terms of our CCF links and the core content framework, this is where we are trying to hit this particular work. Our pillars of primary practice come very much from the core content framework, and our KEP links are the way that we assess that. So these are just the highlights within our own schemata of how we actually are meeting the requirements of the compliance framework that we work under. Logistically, this is what it looks like. Those of you who have done these before will recognize this, that we spend Monday, Wednesday, and Friday looking very much at developing our knowledge, practicing university-based approximations like role plays, and then later on we move into professional sort of preparations. But in between those, our defined practice comes from actually looking at the sort of work that you're doing in schools and then trying to reproduce it before that. Sorry, this thing seems to have a timer on, which I have not managed yet to disable. So that's the shape of it. So Tuesday and Thursday of the week after the holidays, the students will be in school, but Mondays, Wednesdays, and Wednesdays, and Fridays, they'll be with us. So what does it look like? These are the core of what we're going to do. So day one on the Monday, we'll be looking at decomposition. So I'm just going to see if I can't get rid of this timer on here and prevent it from messing up this anymore. Excuse me briefly. Right, let's just take that off completely. And then let's see if we can make it work from here. This might be easier. Yeah, good. So these are the 5 teaching points that we think are really, really critical for the work that we're going to be doing. And these 5 areas are the sort of the key aspects of guided practice that we want all of our students to take with us. And we'll teach them this and we'll exemplify them. We'll give them opportunities to look at material that exemplifies it. We'll look at videos. We'll look at all sorts of things that will actually enable them to get into their heads these 5 areas. And the first one is just that all that you do between explicit instruction and sending off children to be able to work independently or collaboratively, that is what guided practice is. And within that, there's a huge variety of different things. In that guided practice, secondly, children will rehearse new material, particularly if it's absolutely brand new from explicit instruction, whether we rephrase it, elaborate it, summarize it, in order that they might retain it in their long-term memory. Thirdly, we'll want to reinforce everything we've learned about questioning, to assess children's understanding, challenge their thinking, expand their learning, to give you information as student teachers and as teachers to direct further guided practice or instruction. Fourthly, we want to have a revisit of the whole area of formative assessment and feedback, but principally focusing on that skill that good teachers do all the time, of assessing in the moment to be able to know what it is where you're going to direct the lesson in response to something that you've learned from children, allowing you to shift the direction of your teaching, whether it's correcting misconceptions, whether it's enlarging something that a child has brought and saying, well, let's take the lesson that way. It's far more interesting maybe than where we were going before. And finally, to release children to independent work. This is a key skill in guided practice, knowing when to send children off, not too early and not too late, and also which of those children might need holding back in order to give greater support before they can be released into that that independent work. So that's the kind of approach we're taking. These are some of the key readings that we're using. Some of the work of Donald Fisher and Nancy Frey governs the whole area of when do you actually release children into their work. And the blog by Hannah Heron from the EEF is very important because it gives us the sort of the metacognitive framework within which all guided practice takes place. On day one, we'll be looking at a video analysis and asking these sort of questions to help student teachers understand what's actually going on here. And each of these questions relates to the 5 knowledge points in what guided practice is going on for a start. What is the teacher doing that helps secure children's learning? How does a teacher help the children rehearse or elaborate or rephrase? What questions are involved? What assessments involved? And those sort of things to help student teachers really understand what is happening here. As the day goes on, they'll practice a little bit through role play, using some of the scripts that we've taken from some of the videos we've seen. And at the end, we'll define practice. So they've got a clear idea in their head before they come to school. What is it that actually guided practice means, and how can we put it into practice? What should we be looking for? And then there'll be a debrief at the end of the day, sort of instructing them what they should be doing when they come to you in the morning. On the second day, when they're in school, this is the sort of the place where we hope we're going to be, and we're going to look at these 4 activities, really. The first thing is they want to be able to observe expert colleagues actually teaching. We want to have a look at 2 lessons within mathematics. We want to make sure that there are question prompts to scaffold it, and we want to watch you as expert colleagues make your decisions and rationale explicit in the moment. So what sort of things are you saying? You might want to be saying, well, listen, this is what I've just done. Did you see what I just did there? I've just made this decision in response to that child's particular response to me. And so we're trying to sort of encourage you to make all of these things explicit. And that's over 2 maths lessons. They don't have to both be taught by you. If you can find a friend to come and do that, that would be great. And we can, the more opportunities we've got, the better. In the afternoon, we'd like to do the same thing again with different lessons in other areas of the curriculum, because we're aware that guided practice looks very different in different lessons. And although maths is our focus, it's not going to be the only thing we see. As the day goes on, we'll start sort of to debrief with you on what we've actually learned. There'll be a debrief with you for a start as expert colleagues in the classroom, but also a debrief with UEL tutors and peers at a lunchtime meeting that will be online in Teams. And then before we finish the day, there'll be a chance just to prepare what's going to happen the next day. And what that looks like very much will sort of depend on every class, but they'll be getting ready for the sort of things that that student teachers will want to do during the next day. So there'll be a chance to discuss planning for a single 10-minute maths guided practice episode on Thursday. That's the aim, just one of those. If they get a chance to do more, great, but one of those is the purpose. So we want to share plans for learning across the curriculum, which student teachers can team teach with you, so that the explicit instruction aspect of the lesson, which you might teach, flows into the guided practice that they teach and could be returned to. And what that might look like at that planning meeting would be these sort of questions. You know, what's the learning objective success criteria? What relevant prior knowledge have children got, and so on. And these are things that the student teacher will bring with you, or with them, sorry, to give to you on the Tuesday to say, can we sit down and talk about what resources that we've got for this particular lesson, just as you would for preparing and planning any other lesson. The following day, we'll be back in UEL, and we'll be looking at exactly what we found. What was it that guided practice looked like? What were the children learning? What subject knowledge did I need? What do children need to practice? And these sort of things. And we want to have a look, because what we expect to find is that there'll be a huge amount of different practice going on across different schools and in the experience of different teachers and teaching students. So we want to sort of collate those before we start refining it down to some of the different ways that we might approach it, using micro-planning and then micro-teaching to practice the sort of guided practice that we might want to use the following day. When we get to school on the Thursday, we'll want to team teachers a little 10-minute of guided practice with live feedback. We'd like you to sort of comment on it as it goes, and also to get them as teachers to use language that's going to model or use the language of saying, well, listen, this is what I've just seen. What else could this look like? Where are you going to go? What misconception did you make? What happened as a result of that? And then through that, we'd want to have a chance to debrief from you of what you've seen. Just as much as we've done in very much of the other ITaPs. There'll also be a lunchtime and an evening debrief with tutors online. And any chance to repeat that, to do more than one of these authentic approximations of these micro-teachers would be really welcomed. The following day, we come back to UEL and we debrief, consolidate all our learning, try to get a really, really good understanding of what it is we've experienced and done. Have a look at some artifacts, and the artifacts that we're looking at are what a good planning for what is really good planning for guided practice really look like? How do different teachers actually put this into practice? And if you've got ideas of very good quality guided practice that you plan, do let us know, it would help. Then we want to assess how the student teachers have got on, evaluate their learning, identify targets for the future. On the final day, on the Friday, we're just going to be thinking again, reflecting not just on this last ITaP, but all four of them. What has been the effect of it? What's been the impact? How have they all linked together? Have they seen this I do, we do, you do kind of pattern going on throughout the whole thing? And then they'll be completing their workbook, and that will be that. That will be the sort of the shape of the week. So I'm just going to stop the presentation now and just see if there are any questions anybody wants to ask. I'll just stop sharing the screen. And Mark, I noticed you joined us there. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to ask on this. Sorry, I've just seen there's more people arrive. Sorry,
No, it all makes sense to me. I'm good, thanks.
Is there anybody there who'd like to ask a question? No. In which case, what I'm going to do now, it's just 14:33. It's a 20-minute training. I'm going to just stop the recording now, and if we want to have a discussion, we can carry on doing that after this, after I've stopped the recording.